Are you a high-performing athlete trying to decide if Middle Tennessee is the place to live for you? Watch this. For today's video, we're going to walk through Jim Warren Park, breaking down the pros, the cons, the positives, the negatives of being and living as a high-performing athlete here in Middle Tennessee. Now, quick disclaimer, I'm an agent, I'm an athlete, so a lot of this is going to be my opinion and my experience as an athlete in the area as well. So make sure that this also fits your lifestyle, your budget, what you're thinking. The important thing to consider or note is when you're a high-performing athlete, you don't always consider school zones, home type, where it is. You also need to consider lifestyle, how it supports your training, and what is important to ensure that your training is taking place. So today, we're going to go over the pros and cons of doing that in Middle Tennessee. Let's start with what is important to think about and how I would approach it as a high-performing athlete. So firstly, we're to think about, okay, we need to evaluate locations slightly different than the average buyer because we need to take in consideration our training consistency, our training type, our recovery environment, our access to facilities, our access to the things that we need every day, and then finally the climate impact as well. It's important consideration or important note that it's not just thinking of, do I like this area and does it support my training? Do I like this area and is the climate going to suit what I need it to do? Do I like this area and do I have access to facilities? And so as we're going through this, we're going to be thinking about it from that lens of how does it support you and thinking from a place of what is most important to you as a high-performing athlete in this area. If I was a high-performing athlete trying to decide where to live and what important things to consider, I would take into consideration these pros and these cons. So as a high-performing athlete, the first thing I would consider is training facility access and access to the things that I need to ensure I'm training at a consistent level. This is where I think we hit our first pro from Middle Tennessee, at least in my opinion, is the growing infrastructure for training and training facilities that you will be finding. So specifically in Williamson County, you're going to start to find things like high-end gyms, strength and conditioning facilities, boutique-style gyms that you may be interested in. Places like D1 Fitness, TOKA facility here in Franklin is a facility that has basketball courts, indoor soccer field. It's a strength and conditioning facility on site. It has a bunch of areas to hang out. It has a food facility on site as well. There's places like Carbon Performance and then Premier Performance Training as well. And so when you start to look at the training facilities available to you, there's a ton of options that are current and more that continue to build with time. On top of that, you also have access to personal trainers and recovery services. So my personal favorite, at least in Spring Hill, is a place called the Recovery Zone. And they offer a whole bunch of facilities around recovery and ensuring that your recovery is top notch. Other places include Franklin Freeze, Bone and Joint Institution, and Restore Hyper Wellness in Brentwood. And so why do I consider this a pro if you're a buyer considering the area, or if you're a high-performing athlete considering buying in the area? Well, the access to those facilities, the growing facilities that are becoming available, and the recovery consistency throughout Middle Tennessee, especially Williamson County, again, in my opinion, is very important. And so with those becoming available and more available with time, this is going to be a big pro for you to consider with your move. So the second thing I consider, and the second pro I would consider for Middle Tennessee, is access to space and the consideration of congestion. Now, why is this as a high-performing athlete important to consider? Well, outside of your training facilities, outside of your gyms or the things that you need to train, you want spaces to take advantage of so that you can be outdoors, or you can find places that are consistent for you to train and do the things that you need to do. So things like the ability to run and walk from your neighborhood, to be able to run consistently without stopping like you may have to do in denser cities where there's a lot of traffic lights, robots as we affectionately call them in South Africa. And so then that's when you can start to consider neighborhoods that have amenities built into them, like Westhaven, Somerset Springs, Tollgate Village. A lot of these communities will offer both the option to have your space, the ability to do things outdoors, but also have the amenities that you may need. Now, the options for communities grow when you're willing to travel for gyms or travel to facilities that you may need, because for example, you could live in Spring Hill and travel to the TOKA sports facility in Franklin, and it's about a 20-25 minute drive as long as you're willing to do that and it supports your consistency. On top of that, when you have facilities that have, or when you have areas of the world that have more space and less congestion, you also tend to find homes that are slightly bigger with bigger lots. Now that's not always the case, so pinch of salt with that. But in Williamson County, those lots with bigger lots or bigger houses offer you a lot of things. An in-home gym if you really wanted that. You can have recovery setups, so like cold plunges or saunas inside your house. And then like here, you have access to outdoor training. So for me personally, that's a huge win. I'm a big sucker of watching a lot of YouTube videos around people's recovery, people training outdoors, people training for Ironmans or anything like that. And so hearing the option or seeing that option here as well within Williamson County is hugely exciting for me, and why I would consider this a huge pro for Middle Tennessee if you are a buyer and a high performing athlete looking to buy here. The next thing I'd consider as a high-performing athlete is the climate. Generally here in Middle Tennessee, you get milder weather throughout the year. You do get hot, humid summers. So this is where I consider this the first con of Middle Tennessee, is if you're looking to train outside or train consistently, sometimes the weather when it's hot and humid can be difficult to train in. Now this will be especially from May to September, where you have that average temperature around 91 degrees Fahrenheit in July. And some of the impacts of that, it can reduce your endurance output, it can cause higher fatigue, and may require longer times of rest and recovery to ensure that you're performing optimally. So things like midday training sessions become unforgiving, almost unable to do, forcing you to consider early or later training sessions for your sport or your training that you need to do. So a key expectation or note to make here, considering that this is one of the first cons, is you may not need to stop your training, but you'll be needing to adapt your training to adapt to the climate that you are surrounded by. For you as a buyer, as a high-performing athlete, or considering where to move, think about that. Think about, okay, if during the summer I need to adapt my training here in Middle Tennessee, what does that look like? Am I okay with earlier mornings? Am I okay with late afternoons? What else do I need to consider for that training? And most of the time when I share this, people say, oh, weather isn't that big of a deal. Really, weather affects your consistency, your output, your endurance, your recovery, and then on top of that, there's still other factors that affect your day to day. The next factor I'd consider is car dependency and amount of travel time or commute time. Now, for some people, this would be the next con of living in Middle Tennessee, as it is fairly car dependent and there is a lot of commute time for most people living in the area. So if you're someone that's a high-performing athlete looking for a neighborhood that has a ton of walkability, places like Westhaven have that, but it may be harder to find as you're more reliant on a car living here. So things like getting to your gym, getting to the training facility, getting to some parks, getting to events, that all requires that driving time. And so when we start to think about driving time, that's a loss of time where you could be training, a loss of time where you could be spending time with your family if that's important, a loss of time where you may be working or anything like that. So it's really important to take that in consideration, because if you're okay driving, then this is not so much of a con. If you're not okay driving, then this will be quite a big con for you living here in Middle Tennessee. And if you're a high-performing athlete and you're not sure if that's a big con for you, well, it's important thing to note that with time, that friction of lots of traffic or lots of congestion can reduce the consistency or the amount of time that you go towards your performance, because of the frustration or the tiredness that comes sometimes with traffic. Now, again, this is in my opinion as a high-performing athlete, so for others it might not be that case. Some people thrive on lots of driving, so it's important to know yourself, your lifestyle, and what you take into consideration when thinking about commute time and congestion. The next thing to consider is the type of lifestyle you want to live in the area that you want to live. For this question, or what I think about this for this part of the world, is when you think of your lifestyle, what type of lifestyle do you like? Do you like a slower type of pace of lifestyle? Do you like a faster pace? Do you want somewhere like New York versus somewhere like Middle Tennessee? In my opinion, this is going to be a pro for Middle Tennessee, where we have the slightly slower pace of life versus some of your major cities. Now, why is this a pro? Why is this a pro in my opinion? Well, one, less stimulation equals a little bit less stress on your system. And so that naturally slower pace of life leads to less stress in your day, which leads to better performance and outcomes, or allows you to find the right type of stress for your training. Secondly, you have access to nature walks, you have parks, you have trails, you have lots of things that can help reduce your stress in general, allow you to find a little bit more relaxation even within nature. All of that together allows you to build these habits that allow you to support your training and have a lifestyle that is less distraction than some of those that you may find in a major city, again, in my opinion. So really what I'm saying, if you're a high performing athlete, and why I believe this is a pro, is a more balanced lifestyle where it's slightly slower tends to be a strong environment for long-term sustainability and success in your training. So these are like cricket nets in South Africa, except baseball, so I'm pretty sure we stand. So who is Middle Tennessee best for if you're a high-performing athlete? Now I want to clarify, this is going to be a generalization, and it's for a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances, and there's no real one shoe that fits all. So if you're considering it, you are a fit for it. But if I was going to take into consideration all the factors we discussed today, this is who I would suggest it being a great fit for. 1, if you valued consistency over convenience, so that ability to drive, ability to get to different training facilities, ability to take into consideration the different timings of the year, this will be a fit for you. 2, if you'd like more space and less density, this may be a fit for you. And you aren't someone looking for that dense city environment. Now you do get that in Nashville, so you can find that, but in general, you're not someone who's looking for that. On the other end, who's this not a great fit for? Again, generalized statement. If you're an athlete who needs an elite training facility that's fairly niche, if you need to check that Nashville has that or Middle Tennessee has that, this may not be a fit for you. And then following that, also highly specialized coaching that you may not find in everywhere outside of major cities. And finally, people who rely on walkability or love walkability, this may not always be the best face for you. Now, saying that, there are communities that offer that, but again, generalized statements. So a key takeaway or key consideration when thinking about it is Middle Tennessee may not look or act like a key performance hub that you might find in LA or New York, but it can be a highly effective training facility and base if set up correctly for you and your needs and your lifestyle. One of the biggest mistakes I see buyers, especially high-performing athletes, make is choosing a location without considering your daily routine and your daily needs. A reminder, your environment shapes your habits shape your performance. So what I do is I love working and helping clients look for the location that supports their lifestyle, their training, their recovery, and all things important to them, especially their goals. So if you're looking of buying here within Middle Tennessee, I'd love to connect and work alongside you to help you get to your goals, help you find the best location for you, and help support your training day to day. For everyone else, please like, subscribe, follow along, and I'll see you next time.